Hey, Chris from Locked On Cavs, joined today by Ricky O'Donnell from SB Nation and the Cash Considerations podcast. We're going to talk about Lauri, however you pronounce it, Markkanen, the newest Cleveland Cavalier, late of the Chicago Bulls, and who better to talk about Markkanen with than Ricky? And today's episode was brought to you by Fridays and Locked NBA. It's Adam Mares, Nick Angstead. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Ricky, I say Lauri Markkanen. You say what? Like, what is your response when I just say his name? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, the main thing I keep coming back to is he had an incredibly disappointing Bulls career. I think you can start with how the team acquired him in the trade for Jimmy Butler. The Bulls didn't even get that pick. They got no picks out of that trade. They got a pick swap, trading the 16th pick for the 7th pick, taking Markkanen. They also got Zach LaVine. That's worked out pretty well. And Chris Dunn, that did not work out. But I think that, from the moment that trade was made, Markkanen looked like the best piece in the deal. Part of that was because LaVine was coming off the ACL tear. Chris Dunn was coming off a historically bad rookie season. LaVine obviously has turned himself into an incredible player, was an all-star last year, probably in line for a max contract 1 year from now after his current deal expires. But Markkanen was the guy at the time. That's what it felt like. And I was someone who covered the draft for SB Nation, still do it. And in that class, I was very familiar with Markkanen, and I was disappointed with the pick at the time. I wanted them to take Malik Monk or Dennis Smith. Now, neither of those two opinions have aged particularly well, but
hey, Malik Monk could win a ring. Malik Monk might get his roses this year.
He's also on a minimum contract, I believe, on the Lakers, and Lauri Markkanen got $67 million this summer.
Got like a bunch of money, got a lot of money. So good for Lauri.
Well, good for Lauri for sure. So basically, my main thought on Lauri when I think back on his Bulls career is that I was disappointed that the Bulls traded Jimmy Butler to acquire that pick. I was disappointed that he was the selection, and then his rookie year, I'm like, I don't know. This guy looks kind of awesome. He was immediately a capable NBA scorer. He had some shortcomings in the rest of his game, but also he was a rookie. And, he just looked like he belonged on an NBA floor from an early part of his career. The problem with Markkanen is that he never got any better. And if you just look at his basketball reference page, that kind of jumps out. His numbers very much stagnated. There is some, context to that, specifically the Bulls' lack of high-quality point guard play throughout his career. That could definitely be something that helps unlock some improvement in him as he moves on to Cleveland. But in general, I would say his stagnation was really disappointing. And I can't lie, dude. I'm happy to have him off my favorite team. Now, I think that he could still be a pretty good player for the Cavs. He could still go on to have a wonderful NBA career. I have no ill will towards him personally. He always seemed like he tried as hard as he could try. And, he didn't fail to live up to expectations for, what would be like a lack of effort or anything like that. But just not a satisfying Bulls career, and really felt like one of the final death nails in the Bulls Garpax era, where, those guys essentially had to fire themselves to get out of town. And now the Bulls have a new front office that is taking a totally different approach to team building. And that's been wonderful to see this offseason. Of course, there's no guarantees. We'll see how that one works out too. It could go up in flames spectacularly, just like the Bulls rebuild from 4 years ago did. But I guess, when I think about Markkanen, I just think about someone who is ultimately a disappointment in Chicago.
So I think the point guard point is astute, right? Like, I think you're in a position there with him where it's he had Kobe White, who's a score first guy, Sideransky, who was probably the best playmaker on the team last year. You mentioned Chris Dunn, that's true. And then also look, it's been Billy Donovan, who I like as a coach, but then it was Jim Boylan before that. Was Hoiberg there still in 2017-18?
Yeah.
So he had
coach.
Oh, okay. So he had Hoiberg, Boylan, and Billy Donovan. And like I think when you're running through stuff that much, that can be really difficult. Like that can just be a difficult thing for young players to navigate, I would assume. And like, it's kind of hard sometimes to like know how all of that is working when you're not in there every day. I guess like when I look at this, Ricky, I think, okay, I can understand if you're going to tuck yourself into Markkanen because he's 24, 7 foot, can definitely shoot. Like if there's a skill that he has that is definite, it's that he can shoot threes. But I look at like the trade Cleveland made, and it's like you traded for a more expensive guy who does only one thing clearly better than Larry Nance Jr. And I understand Larry, kind of indicated he wanted out. I actually don't understand. Maybe you can explain to me why the Bulls wouldn't just like take Nance instead of Derrick Jones Jr. I think like he would have been amazing for what the Bulls are doing. I don't quite understand that, but like I can see how you talk yourself into it. I just like watching tape, looking at all the numbers. I just come away just like very like, okay, like is it like it's very hard from the outside to extrapolate like what is Markkanen, what is like on one hand like Markkanen's limitations, and on the other hand, what is like the result of the context of playing for a bunch of coaches, no point guard play, etc. The injuries as well, obviously. I have a hard time like extrapolating like what should fall in that in category A and what should fall in category B as far as assigning like credit or blame or whatever to what his career has been so far.
Sure. I think the thing about Markkanen is he is kind of a one-dimensional player. And before last year, his one dimension wasn't that good. He came into the league with this reputation as being a knockdown shooter, and he's a capable shooter, sure. But through the first 3 years of his career, this is just off the top of my head. Feel free to fact check me on this. I want to say he only hit 35% of his threes on a relatively modest volume. Last year was the best year of his career, and he hit 40% of his threes.
Yeah,
which is great. And he had a really nice start, tailed off a little bit, but still, solid year shooting the ball for Markkanen. And if Cavs fans want to talk themselves into Markkanen being worth that contract, well, of course, always pay the players. Like he's worth it, but it's just like the percentage of the salary cap that's taking up the other things they could have done. Nance being off the team now. If you want to talk yourself into him, the one thing he's going to have to do is shoot. And if he shoots, I think that you can make a case that he pairs pretty well with both Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. You could have lineups with Markkanen at the 4 next to either of those guys. He'll be a floor spacer. Hopefully he can crank up the volume a little bit. Hopefully he'll be able to find himself some better opportunities. I don't think Markkanen ever played with a defensive anchor in Chicago as good as either of those guys. In Chicago, it was always the Wendell Carter, Lauri Markkanen pair. How would that work out? And I was very high on Wendell Carter when he was drafted by the team, but he stunk. He was too small. The selling point on him was that he was going to be a high skill guy, and that skill and that feel that he supposedly had coming out of Duke never really translated. Maybe part of that was just playing next to Marvin Bagley. He looked skilled, and he looked like a high feel guy next to Marvin Bagley. But when he got in the NBA, those qualities didn't really come to fruition the way the Bulls had hoped. So if you're trying to talk yourself into Markkanen, I think for sure, like Jared Allen's a pretty dope defender. I think Evan Mobley could be phenomenal. I know I was on this podcast pre-draft and I love him. So I think he could play with either of those two guys, be a floor spacer, be a high volume shooter. And then, if you want to look at him offensively, like the thing that really jumps out to me, like when the Bulls took him, I mean, he was wearing the next Dirk tag, right? Just because he's a tall, foreign-born white guy who can shoot threes. But the thing that Markkanen could not do is create his own shot. And if you look at his numbers last year on Basketball Reference, I think 85% of his field goal attempts were assisted. Maybe it's his makes, but 85% of his field goals were assisted. The year before it was 75. The year before that, it was about 70. So he's always been someone who's been very reliant on other people to set him up offensively. He's not someone who you're going to give the ball to. He's going to isolate at the top of the key. He's going to dribble between his legs a few times and get to the basket or create offense. That's not really what he does. He's someone who can finish plays. He doesn't really leverage his scoring to set up his teammates for success, which has always been an issue. He's not someone who consistently gets to the foul line. He just doesn't get himself easy points and he doesn't help create easy looks for his teammates. But there certainly is a value to that spacing, right? Like spacing is like when you don't have it, you notice it so much. And I know that the Cavs have been kind of a team with, a spacing crunch a bit over the last few years.
Yeah.
So marketing could certainly address that. I thought Darius Garland was really impressive last year in his second season. If Garland takes a step up as a facilitator and not just a pull-up shooter, I think that could mean good things for Lauri. And to me, like, the fresh start is probably the best thing that could have happened to Markkanen. I think that he was ready to move on from Chicago. The front office that drafted him was gone. He had to live through the Boylan era, which I'm sure, I felt scarred.
Leadership Council, Ricky. Leadership Council.
Yeah, okay. Which he was part of. Markkanen was not a part of that leadership.
Big blinking warning sign right there. Not on the leadership council under Jim Boylan. Unbelievable stuff, Lauri. Come on, get your stuff together.
But yeah, I think that, you can talk yourself into it as a Cavs fan. It seems like a lot of money, but, good for Markkanen for getting the money he was seeking. And we'll see how it plays out. I do think he could play with either of the bigs, though. And I think that Garland will be the best facilitator he's ever played with. And those would be my starting points if you're trying to talk yourself into Markkanen.
Yeah, well, let's talk about Garland and Rubio here in a second. But first, got to tell everyone about our friends at BetOnline. Look, it's that time of year again, and your eyes are now turning into football as teams are back in the football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all pro and college football action this season. Get updated on the odds, props, and contests, including the online's biggest $500,000 NFL mega contest and the world's largest $200,000 NFL Survivor contest open now at BetOnline. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and receive your 100% welcome bonus. Be sure to take advantage of their opening day super promo, which is making a bet on the Thursday, September 9th opener between the Super Bowl champion Bucks and the Dallas Cowboys. And if you lose, your wager will be refunded up to $25 for new customers only. And that's signing up using promo code NFL100. It's the fastest way to bet on all your sports action, from football to basketball to boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the great offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, your online sports book experts. And if you want other promo code, Locked On. Also got to tell you about our friends at DirecTV. And they're telling you to bring your television back together. You've got one game live, another lets you stream your favorite shows, sports highlights on your phone. Like I'm sure Ricky's trying to watch some Justin Field highlights instead of Andy Dalton highlights. And you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all the entertainment you love without the hassle, and that's DirecTV Stream. It brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, shows all in one place. That means no more juggling your remotes and no ever again. And the best part, no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. So I think the creator point is smart, because not only do you have Darius Garland, who I think is going to have a lot of responsibility on his plate this year in terms of orchestrating what Cleveland is going to do, whatever that looks like offensively under GB Bickerstaff, and year 2.5, first full year, like sort of halfway out of the pandemic, whatever. I think like that is going to be a big thing. I also think like the Ricky Rubio pairing for him is probably going to be good, because Ricky Rubio is not going to be Spain Ricky Rubio, obviously, but Ricky Rubio is really smart. He has historically been very good working with young guys. He's willing to play that role. We'll see what like the limit. I'm curious to see what the limits are in an organization he doesn't have like a relationship with, right? Like, I have concerns about like what that is going to look like if he gets a little bit disgruntled and the Cavs are losing games and he's like, I would like play winning basketball. I'm 30 years old, etc. Like, I think that's like a storyline to watch. But I think there's questions like, do you start like, do you start marketing with Allen and Mobley along slowly the bench, and like him and Rubio kind of anchor your bench units? I think like how JB Bickerstaff deploys him will tell us a lot about what the Cavs are trying to do offensively. Because I think if you're saying like, okay, day one, we need to have the best functioning offense we can and get things going, is I think going probably a Markkanen and Allen frontcourt and bringing Mobley along slowly. There's precedent obviously for bringing high picks off the bench. LaMelo Ball came off the bench to start last year. There's a bunch of other examples. I just don't, we don't know yet. And I'll be curious to see how they handle Markkanen's role and kind of get him going and try to maximize him in some way.
Yeah, really, like the bigger question around the franchise is probably the Mobley-Allen pairing.
Yes.
And when you get to the answer of that question, you can start to figure out how Markkanen kind of factors into that equation. Because ultimately, like, I think Evan Mobley is the best long-term prospect on the Cavs. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Darius Garland looks pretty good. Okoro had a promising rookie year and could definitely take a step up if he can improve as an outside shooter and just start to, flesh out his offensive game. But I'm very high on Mobley. I think Mobley's going to kick ass. So the question is, like, how do these pieces fit around Mobley? And, in a long-term view, I think Mobley can be awesome defensively. Now, Markkanen doesn't really provide much defensive ability for a 7-footer. It's one of the most sort of underwhelming things about him. Like,
yes,
small guards will knock him off his place when he's in the paint, basically without problem.
Not what you want when you guy's 7 foot and listed at 240. Like, really not what you want.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, he couldn't really play center because he couldn't hold his ground in the paint. And he would come back every offseason with these big biceps, and he'd be throwing down under the legs dunks in warm-up lines. Watch out for that. He does it every game. Same under the legs dunk every game. And he's got these glamour muscles, and they look good. And we were always talking ourselves into Markkanen year-over-year improvement, and it just never happened. But
so you're telling me Lauri skips leg day is the vibe that I'm getting here. It's like hitting like the pythons, hitting like his arm circle, getting in that upper body, never squatting is what the vibe I'm getting here. Tough look for Lauri if true.
Yeah, who's got time for lower body? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that Markkanen can pair well with either of those guys. So if the question is, like, does he start from day one? Yeah, maybe. I think it's totally possible. Like, if the Cavs are fashioning themselves as a team that wants to take a big jump up the standings, that's probably their best course of action.
I think they do. I think, like, there's pressure on them to be better. And I would imagine that this year has some indication on JB Bickerstaff and Kobe Altman's futures. And, like, I tend to think that means you're going to make some win now decisions in some capacity. And Lauri starting might be that.
Yeah. And, like, when you're talking about pairing Lauri with other guys, really the guy he pairs well with is Okoro, because he can space the floor for Okoro offensively. And then defensively, Okoro's ability might take some of the heat off Markkanen to sort of hold his own defensively. So I think that those two guys as a pairing is potentially pretty awesome. And then if you're looking at a lineup with Garland at point, Sexton at the 2, Okoro at the 3, Markkanen at the 4, Allen at the 5. I mean, the Cavs have had worse teams, man, over the last, 4 years, whatever it's been since LeBron left. So I think that you can look at that and start to feel a tinge of optimism that, like, maybe the Cavs are trending in the right direction. And as I've mentioned, like, I think the best piece would be on the bench in that situation. And Mobley, bring him along slowly. It doesn't really matter. You said, you called it out that LaMelo Ball was also coming off the bench last year behind Terry Rozier. So I don't think that, if they decide to start Markkanen over Mobley, that doesn't really mean anything for Evan Mobley's long-term future. Like, he's still going to have every opportunity to prove that he can be a star in the league. So I do like the pairing of Markkanen with Okoro. I think when you have someone like Okoro who has some obvious skills and some obvious shortcomings in his game, like, it makes sense to try to balance out the floor with a guy who is a better shooter than Larry Nance and who, opposing defenses are going to have to respect at the 3-point line. So I think that was sort of the Cavs mindset in terms of making the move. Certainly, I think it's a little bit of a risky move, but Markkanen probably also has some upside for the reasons we've gone over. And will he start day one? I mean, you would know more than me, but I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked just because he started a lot of games over his NBA career. I mean, he basically started for the first 3 years of his career, more or less. He came off the bench a bit as a rookie behind Nikola Mirotic, but, he was a foundational piece for the Bulls' last rebuild, which did not succeed. So I think that it's possible he'll be in the starting lineup for sure.
I think the Okoro point is dead on, just because I think Okoro, for him to hit his ceiling, his shooting has to improve and stuff. And I don't take a ton of stock in the end of last season stuff, just because, like, I think garbage time tends to be, like, end of season stuff, like, it's hard to know what's going to carry over and what's not. It's just impossible to sort of gauge some of that. But Okoro, like, showed some real promise as a slasher and as a cutter, and he's very good at attacking lazy closeouts. And if the defense tilts back towards like Markkanen on the other side a little bit, and he can get a pass swung back his way and then attack it, he's going to probably yam on the center. Like he can do that if his handle's a little bit tighter than it was. You can make that work. I think I want to see him and Mobley play together, dude, just because like Mobley, I like the summer league stuff didn't really like phase me. I thought like he did some stuff that was really interesting, and seeing him up close, I went and just seeing him like basically just be like a 7 foot like long monster is just like you're like, oh, like I see how this is going to work if it pops for him. But like if neither of them are really strong enough to like hang in the pivot, like I don't know if you can play can you play them together if you're trying to like win some games? Can you suffer the minutes, or are you willing to suffer the minutes where like it's Mark and like Bonus and Turner, and like are the Cavs going to be willing to suffer through some of the brunt force that I don't like? That might be Mobley's thing year one, is like he's not going to handle some of the beefier centers. Like I mean, I just don't know how he's going to look in the situations because he's rail thin, even if he's like going to add, like he's going to add muscle. He keeps talking about when he's spoken how much muscle he knows he needs to add until it gets scary for him. So it's going to be an open question. Before we go into the last break, what is Markkanen on defense? What is he like as a defender? If he's not a guy who can defend fives, what is he on the defensive end?
So here's what kills me about Markkanen. These are his per 36 minutes, 0.4 blocks, 0.7 steals, 1.2 assists. So essentially, he's someone who's, just not going to create a lot of events defensively. I think that the way the 4 position has evolved over the last 5 years, now you mostly got bigger wings playing that spot. Now, some of those guys are like Royce O'Neal types, where they're pretty much just defensive wing stoppers, and they're not really on the floor for anything more than like being sort of a shaky, low-volume three-point shooter. So Markkanen can occasionally punish those guys because he does have some semblance of game taking the ball off the dribble, and he is a good shooter. So I think that like you want to see him punish those mismatches on offense, and then defensively, he's just not a very good defensive player. I mean, he's not quick enough on the perimeter to defend most 4s, and he's not strong enough on the interior to defend most 5s. So you're getting him for his offense, and the fact that they have Allen and eventually Mobley to be like really strong defensive components of the team, I think that will help. That will make his life easier. And really with Markkanen, it's just catch and shoot, bro, because defensively, he's not going to be a game changer at all. The hope is just that he can be in the right position. When you're 7 feet tall, you're just going to take up space if you're in the right position. He was at one point a really good rebounder with Robin Lopez, when Robin Lopez was the Bulls starting center, because Rolo would just box everyone out and allow Markkanen to swoop in and take the rebound. So he's not a horrible rebounder, but he's a little bit of an underwhelming rebounder. And then, I think, he's just one of those guys who, even more so than like defending post-ups and stuff, it's like, how does he defend smaller guards driving into his chest? And is he going to hold his ground, or is he going to get knocked back? And when he was on the Bulls, he was getting knocked back consistently, and it was just disappointing because every year he came back with these big biceps and still couldn't, absorb contact around the rim defensively. So I think on defense, I wouldn't get your hopes super high. Hopefully he can be average. Hopefully he can be someone who you're like, I didn't really notice him that much defensively in that game. That's probably the best case scenario. And that's totally okay as long as he's a plus offensive player and a floor spacer. So that's going to be his game. And, whatever you get from him defensively is gravy.
Yeah. All right. One more break. Got to tell everyone about our friends at Rock Auto. You can save time and money when using Rock Auto. So why would you choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? For example, a Honda Odyssey fuel pump is $353 from a chain store. It's only $216 at Rock Auto. Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. They have everything you could need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. For example, my co-host Evan Dammarell saved a bunch of money ordering parts to replace his air conditioner last summer. And like, that's really important when it's hot and you don't want to sweat just driving to the grocery store. Go explore their easy-to-use website today and find the solution for your auto part needs. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck right locked on in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. Got to tell you about our friends at Built Bar as well. Built Bar has so many great flavors: coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, and more. They also have a mix box if you want to try each of the 9 flavors they have out right now, and they have special drops from time to time as well. So like they dropped a cookie to one randomly, and it's pretty good when you get it. So not only are Built Bar flavors the best tasting, they're healthy too. 17 to 18 grams of protein, calories ranging from 130 to 180, 4 to 5 grams of sugar, 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing flavors, all tasty and all healthy. Order today. Get that strawberry, that cherry barcia, that mint brownie, a mix box, or whatever it is you like. And Built Bar is the official protein bar of the United States track and field team. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15. That is LOCKED15. And you'll get 15% off your order. Again, promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Ricky. So 2 last things we're going to hit here. Number 1, Cavs offseason essentially has been Nance goes out. They draft Mobley. They bring in Markkanen. They bring in Ricky Rubio via the trading out Taurean Prince. Cavs offseason to you, like what do you make of that sort of collection of moves?
Yeah. So I'll just say, like, league wide, it seems like there's not many teams taking a long-term approach to their franchise right now. The majority of the teams in the league, I think, feel inspired by the Phoenix Suns' Cinderella run to the NBA Finals last year, and they feel inspired by the Bucks winning the championship after such a poor showing in the bubble the year before. And they're going for it. If you look at the top 10 teams in the East, they're all pretty good. And they're all going for it. And, we'll see what happens with the Pacers now. TJ Warren's hurt, but that's a team that's got some veteran talent. Like, they're not thinking about the future. They got Rick Carlisle in there. They want to win right now. That might be the 10th best team in the East. So when I look at the Cavs, when I think about the Cavs offseason, I see a team that is not yet ready to make its move up the standings. I think that's relatively apparent. Like, even though they have some nice pieces that they brought in this year, I think that the best is yet to come for the Cavs. And whatever the Cavs are this year isn't necessarily going to be an indictment on the future. Like, obviously, you want Garland to take a step forward.
Yes.
You want to see what happens with Sexton in terms of the team's long-term plans with him. Like, is Sexton going to be around 3 years from now? Is he someone you're going to flip? So that's interesting. And then, of course, you have Allen on his new deal. You have Mobley, how that pairing works out, and then Markkanen fits into it. And then, Okoro, too, is a former number 5 overall pick entering his second year. You want to see significant improvement year over year from him. So when I think about the Cavs offseason, I would just say that, they're not going into this season being like, we need to get the 8th seed. They're not going into this season being like, we need to get a spot in the play-in. They are still all about internal improvement and development. And one day that won't be the main focus of the team. One day, one of these guys will become, the headline star. Then you sign some free agents and you bring in a more veteran team that's poised to win around them. But for right now, I think it's still a team taking a long-term view. And there's not that many of those left anymore. I mean, you could put the Pistons in there. You could put, I guess, the Wolves in there, even though they're going to have to, figure out what to do with Cat.
You could convince me what the Wolves are doing at any point, and I'd be like, sure. Like, that makes sense. Whatever.
And then you got, the Thunder, the Rockets. So in terms of teams that are taking a big picture view, I think the Cavs are one of them. And that's kind of year you're setting yourself up for.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to try and I think they're looking for improvement. I would be curious to see how would they define them, because I think the Bulls are a good kind of comparison point here. Is like the Bulls were like, we need to improve. We also have the money to go do that. We can go get Lonzo Ball. We can go get DeMar DeRozan. We traded for Vooch last year. Like they got Alex Caruso. Like they were not shy about throwing money around in free agency to go improve. The Cavs, on the other hand, didn't have money. They were I think interested in various guys, but were kind of priced out. And their big move was a trade using an expiring contract to get Ricky Rubio, also an expiring contract. So it is sort of I think some stuff that helps the infrastructure, but the big move is really just getting Mobley, and you need to see Garland improve and Sexton improve and Okoro improve, and you bring back Jared Allen as well. But none of those moves are like I think like if you needed to in a year or two, and like Allen, like the Markkanen contract I think has a little bit of sticker shock, but it is not like a significant amount of long-term money. The Allen deal, like unless he just regresses, I bet you if you decide in a year and a half or 2 years that like you want to go Markkanen and Mobley because Mobley's added a bunch of muscle and you want to play him at the 5 and that's his best, you could probably trade Jared Allen too. Like I suspect you could find a team that'd be like, we would love to have Jared Allen on our team, and you can deal with that. It's just I think like I just think it comes down to like having Kevin Love basically means you could not accelerate any other way. Like you could, if you don't have the Kevin Love contract, and I've said this a lot, so I don't want to like the dead point here. And then we're recording this like I either the day after on Kevin Love's birthday. He's 33. He's making a bunch of money next year. If you didn't have that money, you could have thrown like a little bit extra. If you wanted to improve, you probably, I don't know if you're getting Alonzo or something like that, but like throwing money at Josh Hart so like Jetty Osman and Dylan Windler and Damian Dodson aren't your backup wings is like a thing you could have done. But like that wasn't the path there. I think that brings us to something I pitched in a little bit on this post you did for SB Nation NBA with the folks over at Liberty Ballers for Ben Simmons. If the Cavs could get Ben Simmons, I would do it, right? Like he'd be the best player on the team immediately, the warts and all. I think for him, it'd be interesting to see him go to like a market where he could have some time to like grow back into like a potential like best guy in a team or second best guy in a team and not get thrown deep into that fire right away. I don't know if that's how it's going to shake out, but I would be curious to see how that would look if he got to go to that situation. Cleveland would be that situation. I just don't know how that, like in a post market and trade market and move world, I don't know how that works. I can't find a trade that both sides would do. Like I could see trades Cleveland might do, the one that you can, I think the Cavs would probably be like, sure, why not? I think on the other side of it, like why would Philly, I don't know what Cleveland has that Philly would really be enticed by at this point.
Yeah. In terms of a Ben Simmons trade, I do think that, a team like the Cavs that isn't typically a free agent destination would possibly be the best place for Ben Simmons. He's been, tied to the Timberwolves a little bit. How often are the Blazers getting marquee free agents, even though that's sort of like a glamour franchise around the league? Pacers was another team I threw out there for him. So, yeah, the Simmons thing continues to hang over the league. The Cavs reportedly yesterday had interest in him, but I think just backing up a little bit, what happened with the Bulls is that they did this rebuild that the Cavs are currently doing, right? Where you draft all these guys high. They're all top 10 picks, Sexton, Garland, Okoro, Mobley. And you're hoping that they gel into something that can become the foundation of a team that can rise up the Eastern Conference and become a consistent playoff team. That's the goal, right? And then you add to that young core with free agents, with trades, and you become a great team. That's the long-term vision. I think what happened with the Bulls is that they realized that their core, which was Markkanen, Wendell Carter, Kobe White, throw Zach LaVine in there too, that wasn't going to lead them to anything. That they were just drawing dead with that, right? There was no upside, there was no ceiling with that. And they had to look at themselves in the mirror and say, we're not going anywhere. What we have been doing, our process to get to this point is deeply flawed. And maybe it's time to try something new. Just because you were able to draft Kirk Heinrich, Luol Deng, and Ben Gordon to become a solid foundation of a change playoff team doesn't mean you can do it every single time. You're picking seventh. And they weren't able to do it this time. And they had to, change their approach. And that started with changing front offices. Because what they had was not going to lead them to any sort of consistent success. So the Cavs are still in that point where they're like, all right, we're still into this rebuild. We still want to see what happens with this rebuild. We're not ready to cash in Darius Garland yet. We're not, they are still holding on to Sexton. Is Sexton in the long-term plans of the franchise? I mean, you tell me, but it seems like he's someone they would trade if they could find a good partner for him. But
yeah, well, I think it's telling that he's extension eligible, and there's been very little movement on a deal coming to fruition. They weren't rolling out the red carpet to give him whatever money he wanted. And this is a guy that the last couple of years, because this is what teams kind of have to do to some extent. They've pushed him as a player of the week nominee a lot. They've nominated him for stuff. They've really marketed him as a cornerstone. and he's put up some really good numbers. He's been inarguably, I think, the most consistently good young player post LeBron. Just he's improved every year. There's a lot of stuff to like about him, but they didn't like roll out the red carpet to like give him like an extension this offseason. Like, and it's been very quiet on that front.
Yeah. So, you'll see, like, same thing happened to the Bulls with Markkanen last year, right? Like, there wasn't an extension. They were apparently $4 million apart, and shout out to Lauri because he got the money he was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So these are just problems. Like, the rebuild always sounds good when you start it.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the Bulls' perspective, like, they were just picking 7th every year. They finally fire Garpax, and they get the 4th pick. They take Patrick Williams. For the Cavs, like, you guys, the team got very lucky by jumping up to number 3, getting Evan Mobley. Now, is Evan Mobley a lock to be an all-NBA level player? Of course not. None of these guys are locks. You could say the same thing about Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green. And with Mobley, there's probably, like, more variance just because he does need to, like, add strength to his frame. And is that going to be possible? How long is that going to take? Will he maintain the same movement skills when he adds more bulk? These are all questions that could sort of, determine his future, the Cavs' future, all these things. But the Cavs are still in the build-up phase. And the Bulls decided the build-up phase was not going to be worth it. So I think that's sort of how you got to look at where the Cavs are right now. And in terms of Ben Simmons, like, I just don't think the Cavs are ready for that type of move. And also, as you alluded to, like, is the Cavs' best package even enough to get him?
No.
To get someone else? Like, probably not. But then, the other thing with Ben Simmons is no one can agree how good he is. Like, you say he's a 25-year-old all-star, and he's 6'10" and super fast and is a plus passer. And he has, once again, obvious strengths and obvious weaknesses in his skill set, maybe more than any player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And, look at the Kings. Like, he would be the best player on the Kings. He'd be the best player on the Kings since, I want to say Chris Webber, but it's Boogie. Boogie just popped into my head as I started.
Yeah.
But, like, the Kings don't want to trade Tyrese Halliburton for him. So I get it because no one can really agree on how good Ben Simmons is. I can tell you what I think, but no one cares what I think. So it's just a similar situation that, smaller market franchises around the league are in. And that's why it is just going to be so hard for Philadelphia to come to a satisfying consensus for all parties as they try to do this Ben Simmons trade.
Yeah. I just can't wait for the inevitable day where it's just like a McCollum Simmons swap of some version. That just feels like what like the natural outcome of this might be to some extent, or maybe the Kings, or maybe just like, you know what? Like, I thought about like with like Sexton. I'm just like, well, maybe, but like you have Tyrese Maxey, who's like maybe not, he's not as good now, but like you have to pay Sexton if you trade for him, basically. And like, is that a win? Is that as much of a win now move when you have Joel? It's so complicated. And like again, like to wrap this up with Lauri, I get why the Cavs do it. Like Nance, like wanted out. It was pretty clear about that in the letter that he wrote. And as much as a timeline exists, like Lauri fits what you're doing better. Ricky, any final thoughts on the Bulls, on the East, on Lauri, and any final takes you want to throw off here before we wrap up?
I guess I'll say if you're a Cavs fan, like it's all about Mobley to me. Like Mobley, Okoro, how those guys develop, Garland. That's pretty intriguing young core. I'll say that that's better than anything the Bulls had when they were banking on, Kobe, Markkanen, and Carter. Now, Levine really leveled up for the Bulls. And if Levine didn't level up, I think the Bulls probably just rebuild through the draft, and that they're not giving DeMar DeRozan $85 million, and they're probably not a destination Lonzo Ball wants to come to. But you had the one guy take the big step up, and then everything else sort of like that put pressure on everything else to fall in line. And if you're a Cavs fan, I think that, they're still in the build-up phase. And it's sort of nice as a sports fan too, because one of the toughest things about being a fan is like the burden of expectations. When now, like, one thing I'm looking forward to about this Bulls season is that every game is going to matter. They're going to be playing the Pacers in January, and I'm going to be like, let's go. It'll actually matter for the first time in like 4 years.
Yeah.
Also, like, I'm talking to some of my friends who are also fans of the team, and they're like, dude, if they win 41 games, this is a disaster. Burn it down. And I'm like, I personally don't really share that view just because they were stuck anyway.
Yeah.
But Cavs fans, no expectations. Hope the young guys can do well. And yeah, I mean, it's just all about the young core, seeing their internal development. And, there's more to this season than wins and losses, which is nice from a certain perspective.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right. Check out Ricky's work at SB Nation NBA. Check out the Cash Considerations podcast. Locked on Cavs will be back on Monday. Everyone have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.